Hello, Nicola. It's so nice to have you today. Let's make sure we're on the same page before we kind of dive into what you do. Just in regard to terminology, you're comfortable using fat as a descriptor, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So I'll probably interchange that with, in a larger body, just because I know not everybody's comfortable with the word fat. But let's start off with your childhood. What was your relationship like with food and your body growing up?
So it was complex, to say the least. So I was never a child that was in a very large body, but I was bigger than my sister. So I have a sister who's like 3 years younger than me. So the best way that I understood about my body was like how it was treated compared to hers. So it was never like explicit, like you're different, you're fat, but it was always like, oh, you should have these different snacks from your sister because these are lower calories. So there was always this underlying sense of, trying to eat healthier or, do the actions without kind of being explicit about it. And my mum went through her own kind of weight loss journey. So I was almost like brought in as a part of that and something we did together. So it was kind of, fraught with those kind of experiences of knowing that I was different, but not really understanding what that meant or what that kind of should look like. When I got my menstrual cycles at 13, they were super irregular. So I think I only had one menstrual cycle up until I was 16. And it was then that I was diagnosed with PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome. And that was the thing that really kick-started my weight loss, weight gain, yo-yo dieting cycle, because I was told I wouldn't be able to get pregnant. And the doctor said that, you need to lose weight. So that's the thing that's going to cure you, going to fix you. So that was kind of, the real thing that kind of kick-started a lot of the more serious like implications around food and like really, really impacted my relationship with food and my body.
Sure. And I know I'm sure a lot of listeners either have been diagnosed with PCOS or have an idea that maybe they do have PCOS, but I'm going to table that in a second. I kind of want to go back. How, first of all, did your mom kind of looping you in to her weight loss journey, did that in your mind forge this connection between dieting and weight loss and having community with women?
Completely, because like the community aspect is always, amazing at these kind of things. Like everybody feels like they're in a club and they're all together. But the real thing that it had was, like my bonding experience with my mother. Like a lot of our relationship was built in and around this shared goal of weight loss. And it's been really hard to navigate that since I've rejected that idea that I want to lose weight or I want to, go on diets and things like that. And it's taken a little while to get back to having a really positive relationship with her because, she's still in that and she's not, like we're very different on how we view that now. And so much of our bonding, our time together, our relationship was kind of it got very messy because it was all really like wrapped up in that.
Sure. Have you had to create boundaries around your relationship with her and the things that you guys discuss?
Oh, really strong boundaries. And it helps being like across the country. So I don't live near home anymore. And so most of our communication is via Skype. And I've made it super clear with, both my parents that if they start talking about weight loss and dieting, then I'm just going to close the laptop. Like it's that simple. Like I can just shut it off at the source. And that's fine. But, so I've got a book and I wrote a little bit about like my experiences in the beginning. And there was a lot of kind of tears when they read that because I think because they felt a little bit responsible for it. And, it's not really something we'd ever explicitly talked about. But I just think, and there was never shaming them. I was never holding them responsible. Like parents who navigate weight loss and dieting with their children often do it from the best of intentions of, they just want what's best for their children. And I absolutely recognize that. But I think it was hard for them to see in black and white, like the impact that then had on me growing up and as a young adult and all these things. So it's been challenging, but we're definitely coming out in a stronger place now.
Yeah, for sure. So boundaries, challenging yet necessary. And I love how it's just a very clear black and white line with you. It's just like, it's just, I'm going to close the laptop.
Yeah, I don't have to hear that. I don't want to hear it. And in this modern day and age, it's a really nice way of just going, yeah, this is just me leaving the room and walking
Yep.
away.
Yeah. And now your relationship with your sister, because you were kind of low-key compared to your sister, you felt different than your sister, you were treated differently in terms of nourishment than your sister. How did that impact your relationship with her?
Good question. I've not really ever thought about that. So I think, growing up with a sister, with a sibling, quite close together in age, I think there's always been that comparison, whether that's me to her, her to me. But yeah, we have a really good relationship now. And I think, obviously everybody who has a body battles with this sometime, right, in their lives. And she's always been in a smaller body, continues to be in a smaller body. But yeah, I know that she still has to tangle, and goes on diets and things. And, it's not something that's a part of our relationship. We've been lucky that that's just not something that's ever been a part of our relationship. So we never really talk about it. And yeah, a lot of our relationship now is focused on my children. Like, she's a great auntie. She has been around for a lot of their young lives. And yeah, like, that has been a really nice way to set up our relationship around them and around, just, yeah, recognizing and bonding over that. So yeah, it's been interesting, but it's always really nice to kind of to be able to have someone to share that with, of like growing up and kind of sharing memories and experiences of, hey, do you remember this like I remember this, and how did you feel about that? It's just nice to have that I can't think of the word, that friendship.
Yeah, absolutely. So now going back to what you were saying, with you were diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. A lot of women have it. A lot of women are misdiagnosed, thinking that they do have it. That was my experience. They thought I had PCOS because I had like 50 cysts in both ovaries, but it was really a hormonal issue, but I digress. So when did you get this diagnosis? And what was your initial, I guess, how did you try to manage it?
So I got my diagnosis 20 years ago, so I was 16. And for me, my symptoms were, I had excess facial hair, I was in a bigger body, I had really irregular cycles, acne, and then obviously when they kind of did further investigations, I had high levels of testosterone and the cysts on the ovaries, or the immature follicles. So it was kind of classic PCOS as you kind of imagine it, but we didn't have the internet, we didn't have support groups, there was no information. So I didn't really have any access to any kind of support. It was just weight loss, hormonal contraceptive pill, and that was it. Like, that's all I was given. So it's only really more recently that I've started navigating what support would look like now for me. So for a long time, I was just on the pill, then I was pregnant, and then I was breastfeeding them, and I was in that cycle of motherhood. And now it's really only been in the past couple of years that I've actually started to think about, okay, well, this still is an issue for me. I still have irregular cycles. I still have all the classic symptoms, but how can I navigate this from a non-diet perspective? So looking at things like supplementation, looking at how I move my body in ways that feel supportive, really finding the pieces of the puzzle that help me in terms of navigating these symptoms, and, recognizing what's going to be really helpful for my own PCOS now.
Okay, great. And you champion women in larger bodies who have PCOS, and you are one of the not pioneers, but one of the larger players in the fat positive community. I would consider you, because I see you everywhere. Yeah. And so how did you find that community?
Oh, I mean, I was just super lucky. So after the birth of my first son, I was still in diet culture, still very much in the case of like making my body smaller, wanting to have that for myself. And it was around about when he was 6 months old, and I just thought, you know what, I am talking about my body in such a way that feels so detrimental, not only to my health, but if he started repeating back some of the things that I was saying, I would be mortified. And I really recognized that about the way that I spoke about food as well. I just felt like it was just enough. Like, as a new mum, I was exhausted. I was just like, I don't have the energy to continue with this, to continue trying to be somebody different, to make my body smaller. If it's not happened now, it's probably not going to happen. So what about if we just try to do something different? So I made myself 2 promises. I was not going to weigh myself anymore, and I was not going to diet anymore. And it's not been linear. It's been up, it's been down, it's been round and round and round. But Luckily at that point, Instagram, this was what, like 7 years ago, and slowly over time, I found these incredible fat people who were just living their lives, and fat wasn't a thing. Like, it was just, yeah, I'm fat. So what? Like, I'm enjoying life. I'm being happy. I'm being, I'm doing all these incredible things in the world, and being fat is just not, it's just a non-thing. It's like nothing. And that really inspired me. I just was like, wow. Like, before that, I just didn't have the comprehension that I could be fat and happy. It was an either or. So it just blew my mind. And then, as I was already trained as a fertility coach at the time, I was already doing fertility acupuncture, which is where I kind of started. And then I just realized, like, oh my gosh, like, diet culture is so insipid in the fertility world. It is everywhere. Even folks who aren't, quote unquote obese, like, people who are maybe slightly higher weights than they'd expect to be, but not like significantly higher. It's diet, diet, diet. Every single fertility clinic, every single fertility support person, it's all about dieting and weight loss and managing weight. And I was just like, this is awful. Like, this is just like, I just cannot believe how badly this is, is treating people. Like, people deserve so much more than this, and it's not helpful.
No, it's not. It's not. Especially when, you can look at somebody and not realize that they have an eating disorder. Like, somebody in a larger body could 100% be starving themselves. So when you tell them that they need to lose weight, all you're doing is triggering an eating disorder that's already there, and people don't realize it. And I think that it's just the easier option to say, and it's just the cheaper option to say for physicians to say, instead of digging more with some more diagnostic tests. It's like, oh, just lose some weight.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful that you found that community, because you're right. It's like, okay, I'm fat and I'm happy. I'm thin and I'm happy. I have blue eyes and I'm happy. I have brown eyes. And it's just another descriptor. We have to take the power away from it.
Absolutely. And that was one of the most liberating things to do, is to start accepting the word fat and just being okay with it. And now my kids call me fat, and it's just a part of who I am, and it's not a big deal. We always talk about, not commenting on people's bodies, because I really want them to just not talk about it, and it just not to be a big deal. And everybody's body is different. So, it's navigating that. Yes, fat is okay for me, but, we don't want to offend other people who may have had that word used against them in a violent way. So it's navigating this world, but language is super important. So using and reclaiming that word has been, such a big piece of my journey.
That's awesome. That's so great. And then you now help women in larger bodies conceive, and you have this fat positive framework. So can you talk a little bit about the framework?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, when I started doing coaching, it was, kind of a one size fits all program. But the more that I started working specifically with fat folks, the more I realized that actually their needs were really different from people in smaller bodies, because there's a huge piece of like advocacy where they are not being able to access care. And that is a huge reason why folks don't often get pregnant, is because they don't have access to the same tools and treatments as folks in smaller bodies. So the fat positive framework is to do with, F is for formulate. So that's about creating a healthcare plan without dieting and weight loss that, really helps you navigate what you want in terms of your own health goals. So we try to make it as accessible as possible in terms of, everybody's got a different health. Everybody's got different aims about what health looks like for them. There are so many people with chronic health conditions that health isn't going to look like this, fits bow on Instagram who's got, ribbed abs and whatever. Like, health is going to be different for all of us. So it's about finding where you are, where you want to be, and navigating that in really small baby steps. Then the A is for advocacy. So really helping people with tons of research, tons of support, tons of tools around how to advocate for themselves in a bigger body, and also when to know that it might not be safe to do that, and what other things that you can do, and how to find healthcare professionals. Like, there's so many different ways that you can navigate that. And then the T is about trust. So it's about really exploring your relationship with both food and with your body, and really relearning how to trust both of those things, so that you are able to, believe that you are capable of pregnancy. Because for so many people, there are so many messages out there that say, you can't get pregnant in a bigger body. It's dangerous to get pregnant in a bigger body. So it's about really rooting back into your body and trusting that it's capable of that. And then the last bit, the positive bit, is all around kind of a positive mindset. So not like toxic positivity, everything's great all the time. It's about really looking at your beliefs about getting pregnant and where you may have got those from, and if they're useful, and if not, like how we can navigate what you believe about pregnancy, being fat and pregnant, and how we can create the most supportive beliefs so that you're able to use those beliefs to inform your daily habits and like your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions, and existing in a bigger body.
Absolutely. I love what you said about toxic positivity. I was just talking about that with somebody else on a call, and it was this positive vibes only thing is such BS. I know it's so bad. You can use those negative emotions to figure out, what's bothering you or what's wrong, and it's a way to troubleshoot. And I love what you said about advocacy with primary care providers. When I was pregnant, because I have had a history of disordered eating, I told them I didn't want to be weighed. And a lot of women say, I didn't know I could say that. I didn't know I could refuse that. It's like, oh no. Well, what I said is if they wanted it for the chart, I just wouldn't look, and then I wouldn't look on the portal. But you can flat out say, do not weigh me. And what are they going to do? Like pick you up and put you on the scale? Like you can absolutely say no. So a couple of questions from what you said about the framework. Number one is there a resource or a place where people can find, health at every size, fat positive primary care providers or OBGYNs?
So I've got a list on my website of fertility clinics specifically that I found that have been supportive, but there are a couple of other really useful resources that I often steer folks to. So there's Plus Mummy or Jen. She's got a really great Instagram account, Facebook, and website, and she's got a really good list of fat positive OBGYNs. And then there's another incredible influencer called Mia O'Malley, and she started crowdsourcing OBGYNs, doctors, primary care physicians, all over the US to be able to help people find fat positive doctors.
That's awesome. So other than refusing refusing weighing yourself, what else can people do to advocate for themselves with their doctors?
So the main way that I help folks advocating is actually access to care. So a lot of fertility clinics, a lot of OBGYNs, they'll have BMI barriers to accessing things like tests, treatments, any kind of support. So it's really helping people find a provider that's not going to do that, because that is the best possible outcome and that's absolutely the care you deserve. But if they can't find one, whether that's for geographical reasons, financial reasons, insurance reasons, then it's about helping them navigate that conversation so they still get access to the treatments or tests that they might need. So helping them understand what tests might be important for them. It's helping them figure out what treatments that they might want, what questions to ask, and then also providing them with the evidence to have that conversation. So if the doctor says no, you can say, well, here is all the evidence that shows that this should be absolutely okay for me to do from a safety perspective, from an efficacy perspective. And, can we have a discussion about this? Who can I ask about this? What evidence do you have for declining me? So it's about, being able to have those conversations. And I absolutely help people. If they have a doctor that they're working with, I can send them emails, I can talk to them and just really help them navigate that from a completely research-backed perspective so that they can access the care that they need.
Perfect. Yeah, there's definitely that barrier where people in a larger body won't get the same care or the same path to care that someone in a thinner body would, because they have that will lose weight first barrier. Okay, so now I know a lot of women are probably thinking, well, what about things like gestational diabetes and preeclampsia? They're taught that if they're in a larger body and they're pregnant, that those are something to be feared. So to what degree are those fears unfounded or founded?
So it's a really great question, and it's one with kind of a few different layers. So if you look at the research from face value, yes, folks in bigger bodies, the higher your BMI, the higher your chance of these things happening. So for example, gestational diabetes, if you have a quote unquote normal BMI, then your chances of getting GD are about 2%. Whereas if you are in the highest BMI bracket, then it jumps up to about 10% with like varying degrees in between. So yes, your chance of getting it is much higher, but it's still 90% of folks who don't get it at the highest BMI bracket. So I think it's important to have that information and also be aware of that, the actual numbers of what actually, your chances of getting it are. And also, we know that gestational diabetes can be well managed. It's something that can be really easy to monitor, to check, to manage for folks. So it should not be a barrier to care. But what is really important to acknowledge is that all the research does not take into account two main factors which impact fat folks' healthcare. And that is weight cycling, so yo-yo dieting, and weight stigma, which is the way that fat people are treated both by their healthcare professionals and the impact that that then has on how they navigate their own health through the healthcare system. So both of those things play a really big role in fat people's healthcare. So what it means is that we've got research that it shows that it increases chronic inflammation, which impacts hormones. We know this impacts their stress levels, and we know that all these things impact the physical health and mental health of fat people. So for me, what I see this as, this increased chance of these things happening, is actually the real life impact of weight stigma and weight cycling on the healthcare of these people. So what the work that I'm doing to help them navigate that with research, with support, is actually reducing that risk, because they are going in with support networks like from me and from other providers, and also with more information about the real risk of what is going to happen, so they can make informed decisions about their own healthcare.
Right. It's like what I see on Instagram where it's like eating the cookie is way healthier than stressing out about the cookie. Like stress does some crazy things to your body, increase cortisol and adrenal fatigue and all these things. So that actually leads perfectly into my next question is, we live in such a weight obsessed black and white view of health. What does health mean to you? How would you define true health?
So yeah, you're right. Like this black and white idea is always a really dangerous trapping to fall into. And like everything is on a spectrum, right? Everything should be able to live on that spectrum from one point to the other. And I think for me, health is the same. Like it varies on a day-to-day basis of what A, my health is going to look like, and being okay with that, and B, the things that I want to do to promote health in my life, depending on my menstrual cycle, how much sleep I got, like all those things. But I always take it back to super simple basics. So sleep and rest is a huge component of my health. And I really, really value having those things in my daily life. And I try to keep it as simple as possible. Like I try to move my body consistently, but that really depends on how I'm feeling. And I never want to pressure myself, because of my previous relationship with exercise was always felt like it was punishment. And it took me a long time to heal from that. So for me, it's about really being kind to myself. I think that would be the essence of what my health is being kind to myself and looking after myself in the best way I can in the moment that I'm in.
Perfect. I'm so glad we were able to talk today. I have one final question for you that I ask everybody, and that is, since this podcast is called the Finally Free Podcast, what does it mean to you to be finally free?
That's such a good question. I think for me, to be finally free is to be able to make choices in my day-to-day life based on what I want. So for such a long time, it was always, oh, I should do this, or should I do this? Or, the weight and the expectations of other people's needs and desires, whether that's to make my body smaller or to just be the perfect daughter, parent, child, all those things. So finally free is to me to be able to make the choices that I want to do with my life. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for meeting with me. This was fantastic.
Thank you for having me. This has been such a joy.
Of course. All right. We'll talk soon.
Bye.